Welcome to Read This Author's Corner. I am your host, Alice Maria James, and today we have with us an amazing children's author, Crystel Patterson, the author of the Inspired to Be series. Welcome, Crystel. It's so wonderful to have you here. Um, I am so excited about this conversation because we met just a few weeks ago, and I want to get to know you. I want others to know what you're doing. I'm so excited about the types of children's book that you write. So, if you don't mind, would you just sharing a little bit about yourself with our audience?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thank you so much for having me on. Um, my name is Crystel Patterson, and I am a children's book author. I actually recently transitioned to being a children's book author full time, like as recent as like yesterday. But I actually started on this journey only, I don't know, like 3.5 years ago. So it's relatively new. And my previous profession, I was a technology professional. And sometimes you're doing something and life kind of shows you that you should be doing something else. And that's kind of like what happened. I have two children, both boys, and back in 2020, they were 3 and 8. And I'm sure you all remember what craziness was happening in this country and in the world in that year. And my older son, as I'm sure many other children, were paying attention to what was really happening. And my older son, Croy, started asking questions about George Floyd and what happened to him and why that happened. And that struck a chord with me. And it made me very sad that that's what not only my child was focused on, but I'm guessing many other children were focused on it because it was everywhere. It was everywhere. And as much as it's sad that that's happening and there needs to be attention on that type of injustice that happens to Black people, I also felt that it was sad that there's not more positive stories circulating of Black people that children could see, right? And so it just felt like it was an imbalance, right? And so my younger son really, really loves books, and we have a beautiful relationship around bedtime stories and just like books. And through observing him and his love for books, it kind of struck me like I can use books to help children see more positive stories of Black people, and maybe address some of the what I'm seeing that's happening right now with the questions that my son was asking, the older son was asking. So I actually decided that I would write a book series to spread Black inspiration to all children, and my whole goal was to just uplift more positive stories of Black people that children could see and be exposed to, and know that although there are bad things that happen to Black people, there's also very good things that happen to us. And let's focus on the good things more than we're focusing on the bad things, right? And so that's kind of how my journey started. And so the book series is called Inspired to Be, and every book in the series is meant to just inspire something. They're all life lessons in children's books, right? That will inspire them, but more importantly, show them Black excellence, right? And all the stories are inspired by real people. So the books are actually written in a fun, memorable way. I use a lot of rhyme and repetition so that it will be an enjoyable story that they would like, but there's a real message, a real lesson in the story, and then they get to learn about the person who inspired the book, the very real person that inspired the book. And so right now there's 5 books in the series, and it's growing.
Well, that is excellent. And I love when people see a problem or an issue, and instead of complaining about it, they take action to see how they can be a part of the change, be a
Yeah.
part of making things better. So I'm always excited when I'm talking to someone that is more of a change maker than than a complainer. So,
Mhm.
so that sorry, that is excellent. And the fact that in the midst of all the craziness of 2020, you took what was a tragic experience and turned it into something that was a teachable moment, that was something that you could show your kids how to look beyond.
Right.
Um, I commend you for that. And just share a little bit about, I love where your inspiration came from, but how did you choose the people that you wanted to base the stories on? What was what was that process like?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of my stories kind of connect back to me in a sense. Like, I started making a list. Like after I had the vision for the series, and I said, "This is what I'm going to do." I started making a list, and I really put down people who inspire me on the list, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take these people and I'm going to find out what it is about them that would inspire a child, right? How am I going to make them relatable to a child? And but it started with a list like Gabby Douglas. Right away, I love watching her at the Olympics. I just really love watching her, and I follow her still. So she was on the list, right? Oprah Winfrey was on the list. I didn't write a book about Oprah, but she was on the list because over time, and the more I write, the more I focus in on who I want to write about. And I don't actually want to write about the super famous people because their story is already accessible to children. They'll find it. So I started focusing more on people who they have some type of fame because I had to be able to research them to find them, right? But they're not super famous, and it brings visibility to them in another light. And then children start seeing that I don't actually have to be a super famous person to do something great, right? So I had a lot of people on the list, and I go down the list and I'm like, okay, let me study this person. Let me figure out what it is about this person that inspired me and how might that inspire children. One of my books is actually inspired by Chadwick Boseman. He's the most famous person that I've written about. And that was just because the event of him passing inspired me to write about him because I started learning so much about him. Everyone was very shocked when he passed away. No one knew he was sick. And he was already a very upstanding person. And so when you start digging into who he was as a person off screen, you learn so much about him. And I just felt compelled that I needed, like, his story is so inspiring that it would inspire children. So let me make him the muse of one of my books. But mostly it takes a lot of just, research. I'm a woman in STEM, and so like my last book, I it is inspired by other women in STEM because that's something that's close to me too. So it's a lot of inspiration that I get, and I'm trying to figure out, can I pass that on to children? Does it make sense to pass it on? Because there might be someone who inspires me, but it's not really relevant to children. So I'm trying to. There's a piece of me in all of the books. Let's just say that.
That's excellent. And I would like to talk about a woman in STEM and inspiring children into that field. Actually, the author that's up now that I interviewed, her video is up. She talks about STEM and STEAM because she's bringing art
Art.
into
Hmm.
into STEM. And I think that is a very important. I come from an arts background, so and sometimes people don't connect the arts with STEM. How how you wish for your books to be perceived or interpreted by kids to inspire them to look into STEM.
So I don't focus specifically on STEM, but what I do focus it on is pushing children, and pushing might not be the right word, but inspiring children to just dream big and do things that maybe they didn't think they could do, right? And I think a lot of children in school sometimes might struggle with math and science, and so they might shy away from going into majors like engineering and stuff. But I hope my books will show them that, like, you can do anything that you set your mind to, right? And so maybe it might be something that they're interested, but but it might not be the easiest thing. How do you, if it's something that you're interested in, what do you do so that you can get better and keep getting better? My book talks a lot about perseverance and determination and just like hard work, right? Because everything is not going to be easy. Or maybe you're talented at something, but to make it actually get you somewhere, you got to put the hard work with it. You can't, talent alone that doesn't get you anywhere, right? So I think it's like those lessons that just encourage them to just dream big and keep striving for greatness, right? Or just striving to just do something that makes you happy and that you can feel proud of. And that's kind of the essence, like just inspiration, right? Like, and I think the reason why, another reason why the books are all inspired by real people, in addition to just wanting them to be exposed to more positive stories of Black people, is so that they can see it's very realistic to do this, right? Like someone else did it. They're a regular person just like me. Guess what? I can do it too. And so that's how I think inspiration works. We see other people do something and then we're inspired that we can do it as well. And so it's a huge theme of inspiration in all the books. Like, I mean, the series is called Inspired to Be. And that B is like dot, dot, dot. Inspired to be anything that you want to be, right?
You have one of the books. It was Too Young for
I am
What
different.
is it?
Not too young for what? Too young to.
Too young to what? Yeah, I thought that was a very yes. I thought that was a very interesting name. I would love for you to talk to me about that particular book.
Yeah, so this book was me trying to get back to my roots a little bit. Um, I said I write down a list of people who inspire me, and someone who inspires me, I've been, so let's just say this is my fourth book. And so the three books before this, they were all like people who are just African Americans, right? And I'm actually Trinidadian. And so one of my way, I just felt like I wanted to get back to my roots and show people another side of me. So one of my heroes, I guess, from Trinidad is a music artist, soca artist, Machel Montano. And so this book is actually inspired by him. And the reason why he is inspiring is because he is the definition of you're never too young to do anything that you want to do. He's like the definition of that. He started his music career at 7 years old, and the way they do the music competitions there, it's very competitive. And it all kind of like coincides with the carnival events or whatever. And it's a competition. They're competing, they're making their songs, and they're competing for titles, right? And at that time, kids weren't like involved in those contests, right? Like it wasn't a place for a child. And he wanted to be a soca artist, and he got a lot of pushback that, he shouldn't be doing that. And, with the support of his family and whoever else was in his corner, he did it. Right, he did it, and actually, one of his first songs was called "Too Young to Soca" because they were saying that he was too young to be a soca artist. Well, guess what? He's been doing it for 42 years now, and he is the best to do it. He is the absolute best. So imagine that. Like they actually even changed the rules a little bit on him to kind of keep kids out of the contest. So it's just an incredible story of like being told that you're too young, but knowing that that's what you want to do, knowing that that's your passion, and finding a way to do it anyways, and then sticking with it to the point where years later you're like the best to ever do it. You've made a name for yourself doing that thing. And so I wanted to write this book. All of my books are actually fictional. They're inspired by real people, but I make the story fictional. When I started writing this book, I decided to take a different angle here because I was like, this is such an important message for children that they need to know that there are so many children, real children, who have done great things despite their age. So this is actually a creative nonfiction. The main character is my imaginative character that I made up, but everyone that he talks about in this book is real children who have done really incredible things despite their age. So it gives little profiles of them. So that child that's reading the book can be like, oh wow, I didn't know you can do that. And maybe they'll go and learn more about that child. Or go learn about other children who didn't make the book because there are so many. I only put 10 children in here, but there are so many, and that might inspire them to what's that thing I want to do? Let me go figure out who has done it, or let me go talk to someone. Let me talk to a teacher, my mom, my aunt, and see how they might be able to help me or guide me in doing this. So it's such an important message that children need to hear. And I know I'm long winded a little bit, but the other thing that I will say is that we often put like kids in boxes as far as what they can do and when they're allowed to do it. And I understand that there are some things that could be harmful, and that's why we say don't do it. You're too young for that. But there's so many things that are productive that they want to do, and we still discourage them from doing it. And we shouldn't. And we shouldn't ask them, what do they want to be when they grow up? Because I do believe that inherently that puts them in a box that makes them feel like, oh, well, there's this thing I want to do, but I can only do that after I grow up and get a degree or whatever. Like, just leave it a little more open ended so that they could start thinking, what is the thing that I want to do now? Right. So that's what this book is trying to do.
But in
Exactly.
a few short years, you have become prolific writer of children's book very quickly. So that is absolutely amazing that you have committed this seems like a calling.
It feels like a calling. It feels like and the funny thing is, because we celebrate Kwanzaa, and anytime we got to Nia and we started talking about purpose, I never felt convicted of like what my purpose was. It was always a big family discussion every year. Like, I don't know what my purpose is. I know I do good work. I know the work that I'm doing at my company is actually helping people, but like I really don't know why God put me here. And that was something I struggled with. And when I started on this journey of writing, it became so obvious that this is my purpose. Not only did God give me the vision of exactly what this needed to be, but He equipped me to be able to do it. Because people ask me sometimes, are you a teacher? Are you like, did you study writing? Like, no, I did not. But somehow here I am publishing these books, and I do feel like He definitely equipped me because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And when I started doing it, I lost a lot. Like, before this, I was so driven at my job. Like, I was climbing the corporate ladder. Like, that was all I was focused on. Like, it was my everything, right? As far as like career. And then when I discovered this and I discovered how this makes me feel and how fulfilled I am writing these books, reading them to children, getting to see the impact it's having on them, how that made me feel. Oh, I had no interest in my other job after that. Like, it just, I felt like this is what I needed to be doing all along. And that's why I feel like it's my purpose, because it's like, if I feel like this, it makes it very hard for me to do anything else, because it's like, it's not important to me anymore. This is the only thing I want to do. So it definitely felt like a calling. It definitely felt like, um, God was trying to be patient with me because I was fighting it for a long time too. Like, as far as like taking the leap and doing this full time, I think He was being patient with me, but I feel like He has aligned it perfectly to where it was obvious that this is what I needed to be doing. It's funny because before I started doing this, I actually had a huge fear of speaking in front of crowds, like a huge fear. Like, you couldn't pay me to get up in front of a crowd and talk. Do you know how much I do that as an author? And do you know how easy it feels?
Understand that. I understand easy even when things are hard because the your heart is in this. So the expectation that there's always going to be things that are hard, but um because your heart is so connected to it, it it is what it is, kind of, you
Right.
know that this too shall pass.
Yeah, exactly.
What would be your for lack of a better word, elevator pitch to the rest of the world as to like why you should follow this story, why you
Yeah.
should follow these books?
Yeah. It's funny because before I started doing this, I actually had a huge fear of speaking in front of crowds, like a huge fear. Like, you couldn't pay me to get up in front of a crowd and talk. much I do that as an author? And do you know how
Well,
easy it is?
I gave you a strange look because I met you speaking in front of a crowd, and you would never know that that was ever an issue because you were extremely articulate, you were extremely to the point, engaging, inspiring, all of that, you know?
Thank you.
So,
Yes. And I still think I'm afraid of speaking in front of crowds, but when it comes to what I'm doing with these books and what other people are doing with similar books and just this mission, I can talk about it all day. And I am not in my head about if I mess up or anything like that. Like, I can just like give it my all, right? And it feels very comfortable. It feels like it's me. It's what I love doing. And so it's a lesson that, like, when you're doing something that you love, it kind of helps you overcome fears, right? Like, because you're not afraid to fail. Because you're getting something out of it just by doing it. So you're not really like you can't fail, right? Like, I can't fail at
yeah,
this.
because the mission is greater than any apprehension, you know?
Right,
And I say that because I can understand exactly where you're coming from. Because when I started doing these interviews, I'm like, oh, you know, I grew up with people teasing me about my voice. They used to tease me and say I sound like olive oil. And I and I
right,
went through, I spent like 2 years with a voice coach trying to get my voice deeper, not sounding so nasal. And then there are still times when I get excited about what I'm talking about, and it goes like, I'm like Fran Drescher, you know, my voice goes up like 50 octaves. And so, in doing this, especially when I started out and I was in this studio and they didn't do edits, and I was there and I was terrified of making a mistake. But what kept me going was the authors that I met that were so excited about someone listening to what they had to say, someone wanting to know about their book. And I I got out of myself and I'm like, you know, it's not about you. There's something you're doing, a service that you didn't even know was needed, and people
right.
are responding. They're very happy, they're excited for it. And I'm just curious. I'm interested in why people are passionate about what they're doing. So it's fun for me
Yeah,
to hear what motivates people and what keeps them inspired, because I'm sure this wasn't always easy. I'm sure you must have had some challenges along the way. um, is there something that comes to mind? And I like to ask this question just because quite often people when they see someone doing something successfully, they don't really understand that you're doing it and it's successful despite the challenges that you face. So, is there something that might have happened that made you question what you're doing?
so it's funny because I've always told people that because of how this came about and because of the like what motivated me to do this and how I felt I got the vision, I always tell people like this has felt very easy. Um But I will say, and like I'll even go back and say so much to where when I was actually writing the first few books, I was in a very, very demanding project for work. We were going through COVID, right? Like, and I was working on a vaccine management system, right, for COVID-19. And like we were working when I'm not kidding when I tell you we were working 20-hour days. I remember doing the photo shoot for my website for the books, right? While I was on that project, and we worked on Christmas Day, right? We were working on Sundays, like it was just I had to ask for the Sunday off so that I can go do this photo shoot. And I remember my friend constantly having to do me like this, wake up, because at the photo shoot I was falling asleep, right? So she kept snapping at me, wake up, open your eyes, right? And so I say that to say that like because of what this meant for me that I was doing this. I pushed through at even a hard time in my life when I probably had every reason to say, this is a great idea. This is something that I want to do, but let me just wait until I get off this project to do it. But I couldn't wait, right? It was like such a strong pull that I needed to do this. And I was finding the time to do it despite my heavy schedule, right? So that's what I mean when I say it was easy. But I will say that once I published the book, I think what becomes hard is it becomes a business. It's no longer I did this to put a good message out there. It's still that, but it's no longer just that because all of the money that I put into producing the book, paying for an illustrator, paying to print the books and all this stuff so that people can have them. And now I'm wanting all these children to have access to them, right? And so now it becomes a business and you lose time focusing on the business where you could be creative, right? So you're I don't have an agent to do a lot of the business things for me. And so that has been a challenge. The marketing of the book, right? Because I have big dreams that like my books will be in every household. How do I get it there? And I'm not a marketer. And to get someone to who knows what they're doing and help you successfully market the books is very expensive, right? And so and there's no guarantee that it will work. So you're trying to do it all by yourself. And it's that is the challenge. Like, how do I bring visibility to these books? How do I get these books into schools? How do I get these books into libraries? And it's not something that defeats me because I'm going to continue to try and do every all I can every day to do that, but it is a challenge. And when you don't see, well, oh, my book didn't go viral like some of these other people, right? Like that can be um deflating for some people, but I know what the end goal is and I'm going to work every day towards it. And so even though it feels like a challenge, um I still think this is easy, right? Like I still, because I love doing it every day. I love it so much that it feels easy.
And you're saying, I want to be in every household. How do we get people to come along with your big vision? What would you
I believe that these books are very necessary. And that has been affirmed for me by seeing how educators respond to the books, how parents respond to books, and how children themselves respond to it. I feel like it's very needed. Um, One of my books in particular is called I Am Different. And oh my gosh, I can tell you so many stories where full grown adults read that book and the child in them starts to cry when they're reading that book. Not because it's making them sad, but because they are saying that, oh gosh, why didn't I have this book when I was growing up? Right? Why didn't I have this book? And so now I'm looking like, okay, these children have this book, right? They have it. It's going to help them. It's going to have a lasting impact on them. All they need is to get access to it, right? And so that's why I'm trying so hard. Like I right before this meeting, I was on a call with a school district, right? How do I go beyond just having an author visit at a school where the children get an experience with me and these books, but like how does this become something that is continuous for them to continue to have access to the books, for them to continue to learn the lessons and live out the lessons that they're learning in this book? That's what I'm trying to talk to school districts about right now because I believe that it's going to help children not just now, but it's like life lessons that's going to stick with them as they grow up, and it's very needed. So you guys get on board, man. Get on board. And just if you don't want to buy the book, email me and I will send you a way to read the book for free so you can see for yourself.
Well, excellent. I am so excited that I was able to connect you with iReadify because that's another platform that you have, and they fell in love with your books, and
Yeah.
I knew that they would. It was just like when I heard you read, because I think you read the spaghetti one.
Hmm.
I heard about the other books and I was like, oh my goodness, this would go so well on this platform that is geared towards this enriching and empowering experience of our children seeing themselves and seeing themselves in so many different ways. As we're about to wrap up, is there something that you would like to share with the audience? Is there a takeaway that you would like for them to know about you, the books, your vision for the future, whatever it is that you would like to leave them with or would like to have stick with them after this conversation is over?
Oh man, this is always the hardest question because I'm like, what wise thing can I say? But I learned from this experience is that it's important to keep an open mind, because if you would have asked me 5, 6, 7 years ago if I would ever see myself here, I would say absolutely not. I was never someone who really got any kind of satisfaction from writing. I majored in engineering. I've always been a math and science type of person. So like writing, even though I was always like really good at school. So by default, I could write, right? Because I took school very seriously. Writing was never like a passion point for me. And so if I was to go searching for my passion or the thing my purpose in life or whatever, I would have never looked in this corner, right? Is what I'm saying. But because I got a nudge and the right kind of push and motivation, you know, I could have said, no, I can't do that. I'm not a writer, right? But because it was a nudge, I was like, I felt compelled to explore it, right? So I would just say, like, if you're wondering what is that thing you should be doing and you're feeling like little nudges from unexpected areas or places, like try to explore it. Like I would say, act on nudges, act on, and you never know,
I like
where it
that.
might lead you. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I also want to loop you in because 2024, I am focusing on amplifying Caribbean writers. Actually, I'm for the Caribbean too. I was born in Jamaica. Like, we have this rich history, these phenomenal people, but how do we tell their stories?
Mhm.
Were inspired by the musician, the soca musician. How do we incorporate our Caribbean history into this world and have not just people from the Caribbean like and appreciate it the same way they like and appreciate the food and the music? How do we
Right.
have them appreciate our literature, our minds, our culture, our history? There's nothing wrong with just an African American conversation, but it becomes so much richer when all the cultures and all of the experiences are blended together and we can see how much we do have in common.
And it's funny because um as a children's book author right now, I focus on picture books. And that's only because that was what was needed based on who inspired me to write. But that who is now 11 years old and he's no longer interested in picture books. And so I'm like, man, I gotta grow with him, right? And I might have to write like a middle grade book, for my middle schooler now, right? And so I actually have been thinking about doing that, but also doing it in a way that really honors my childhood and all the folklore, Trinidadian folklore that I grew up hearing about and all that. So that is actually my next project is working on a middle grade type of book. And it's going to be based in Trinidad.
Oh, excellent. So I can't wait to have you back to talk about that. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to say in closing?
Keep reading with our children. It's so important to have that special time to just allow them to immerse themselves in a book, whether you're letting them read it to you or you're reading it to them. I feel like some of my best moments with my younger son is when we're reading together. So yeah, I would just encourage you to just like keep reading with them, keep encouraging that joy of reading, that love of reading in children. It's gonna make a big difference in that child as they grow up.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal. It was wonderful speaking with you. I'm excited about what you're doing, and I know greater is coming. So you take care. And until we do this again with the next project, be blessed.
You too, you too. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank Crystal Patterson for being with us today. I encourage you to go out and pick up a copy of one or all of her children's books. Until next time, I am Alice James. This has been Read This. Keep reading, keep being inspired to greatness.